Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com, where we keep you in the loop of everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. I am joined by the wonderful Luiz Estrella.
Hey, everyone.
And we've also got Nicolas Shade.
Hello, everyone.
We're kind of playing the podcast shuffle right now. Dennis is not here this week. I wasn't here last week, but one of these days we'll have everyone together again. You all know how it is. we're all adults with jobs and lives, but we try and carve out some time every week to keep you all informed over what's going on. And we are pleased to announce that the world's longest ongoing Nintendo Direct continues this week with more Nintendo announcements. It really is. I really do feel like they could have just made a whole direct at this point. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. I'm not sure why they decided to split everything up. But at least we're getting some news. I guess ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what the people want. So we're going to start off with probably the most exciting announcement of the week for fans of some good old-fashioned kart racing. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is continuing to get these booster course pass expansion updates, and the first one came back in the spring, and it brought 8 new courses to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this expansion is also included in Switch Online if you have the expansion pass for that. So they're bringing in all these new courses over to the game, and this week they announced that Wave 2 is launching. Well, I guess by the time you're listening to it, it'll be this week, August 4th. And it is introducing 2 new cups that are bringing over 8 new courses. Mostly older courses from some classic games. We do have one brand new course called Sky High Sunday, which looks like, to me, it reminded me of one of the worlds from Super Mario Galaxy. You know, the sweet galaxy?
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came into my mind. But what do you guys think? Did you guys check out the trailer for these new Mario Kart courses?
Yeah. I was really looking forward to it. I think every single post that Nintendo made on Twitter recently, all the comments were like, "Where is Wave 2?" So people were really expecting to see that soon, and I think the selection of tracks compared to the first wave is way better here. I think those tracks are way more exciting to me. Waluigi Pinball in particular is one that I'm super excited to play. And the Sunday one looks delicious, looks really good too. I'm also excited. Again, I have some mixed feelings because those clearly are tracks from the Mario Kart Tour, from the mobile game. Even the new one, I think, with small letters on the bottom appear that the track will eventually come to Mario Kart Tour. But looking at them from a gameplay perspective, not talking about the visuals and all of that, I think they all look super exciting and really fun to play. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think like back when they were first showing off these courses and people were doing the side-by-side comparisons with the base game, they're like, yeah, okay, maybe some of the textures in these courses, maybe they don't look quite as sharp or quite as detailed as the courses in the base game. But honestly, when you just watch the trailer by itself and you're just looking at these courses as individual tracks, I'm with you. I think everything looks great. Waluigi Pinball, I am so excited for that one. I have not played that track. It really is. For everyone who grew up playing Mario Kart on their DS, I have such fond memories playing that game with my sister in the car ride, setting up like local wireless play, and that was always one of the first tracks we'd go play on. It looks amazing. Like, they've clearly put in a lot of work to bring up that course in particular to modern standards. Some of the other older courses that are coming, not from Mario Kart Tour, we've got Calamari Desert from Nintendo 64. That's the one that has the train going around. I'm sure lots of people remember that one. We've got Mushroom Gorge from the Wii, which I think is one of the... You run into that course pretty early on in Mario Kart Wii.
Yeah.
So I do have some memories playing that one, jumping over the mushrooms with your motorcycle.
Yeah, it's a classic one. I really like that also.
Same.
Yeah, I will say I do have a harder time getting excited about some of these, the SNES and the GBA courses
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Just because they're all just those
Super
consoles.
flat.
Yeah, they're a little flat. Yeah.
Yeah. Mario Circuit 3 especially is just confusing because they didn't. It's not a particularly interesting course in terms of the layout, and visually it's even less so. They really didn't do anything to touch it up visually to make it just a little bit more interesting.
It's a retro look. I mean,
yeah.
Right. Well, and I mean that doesn't bother me as much as the fact that I feel like I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but isn't there already a track in the base game that is very similar, like aesthetically
There's
to
actually there's the Game Boy Advance Mario Circuit that is in the base game. It's the one with the like it's a little floating U section that has anti-gravity near the start of the course.
Oh,
and then you
yeah.
They make it way more interesting than it was.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I remember there being another like kind of throwback course in the base game that had a super similar aesthetic, but I can't really remember. But I will say I really do like that they're bringing over these other courses from Mario Kart Tour as well, because I mean I played a little bit of that game, but back when it came out, it didn't have controller support or anything, so I didn't really get into it. And so I'm really happy they're bringing in these courses to the main game. I really don't care that they're ported over from Tour personally.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite part of the expansion pass as well, is just the opportunity to actually have all of these courses on a home system, which I think is also probably a decision Nintendo's making so that when Mario Kart Tour inevitably goes down at some point in the future, these courses will still be accessible in some form on a game that's like,
Right.
still in service.
I sense a little bit of snark there, Nicholas. Are you saying
Well-
Nintendo has a history of shutting down their mobile games?
Listen, I'm not going to say that Dragalia Lost just got its last story update, but,
Yeah.
it's a mobile game, so at some point it's eventually going to become accessible and taken off of the App Store. So this
No,
kind
you're
of,
right.
like, I guess
You're right.
future-proofing is a good thing, in my opinion.
And Nintendo is going to the trouble of creating all those amazing tracks for the Mario Kart Tour, and if it is that easy to translate all of those, because I think the engines of these games are really similar, so if it's that simple to port those tracks to the Mario Kart 8, I think it's just great. And I don't complain a lot also, because technically I'm not even paying for that expansion, because it is free for the expansion pass that I already have. So in that sense, I think I'm really okay with what they are doing, with the way that they are doing. If I was paying like a more significant price, I would like to see more polish and more new tracks and stuff like that. But for what it is, for a game that launched 5-6 years ago, I think it's great. It's a way to keep the game alive and to receive those new tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure this conversation is going to come up every time we get more of these courses, but I really do wonder, like, what would a new Mario Kart game even look like at this point? Like, you're bringing in, I mean, this Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to have like 96 courses by the time this expansion pass is complete, which is just like so much content that
Insane.
I don't know what would, I mean, I'd imagine if they are working on a proper Mario Kart game, they have to be saving some courses to bring back for that one, but I don't know, maybe not, or maybe they'll take a totally different approach, but it's a big question mark right now, I feel like.
Yeah, we don't know what they are doing, what they are planning. I would imagine that they're going to do something completely different. But again, Mario Kart 8 is such a well-polished game, such a great experience, that it is even hard to imagine how do you make something like that even better, It's like at least for me, I feel it's like the ultimate Mario Kart experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is probably just trying to refocus in another direction.
Yeah.
Either
yeah.
rebooting it as like a super Smash Kart, Super Kart Brothers, where you include more franchises, or
I would be so down, honestly. Yeah,
I mean, listen, give me Kirby on a Warp Star and like Mario Kart gameplay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have Link riding Epona. You could have
We even had
Samus, you know, on top of her gunship. You could
Sonic
have.
running.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, we even had the it was Rosalina's Smash trailer where it opened with a whole bunch of characters racing on
Yeah, I
Rainbow Road,
remember
and
that.
Kirby was there. Like, yeah, you already have the concept there. Nintendo, do it.
At least they've thought about it in some capacity. So the other part of this big Mario Kart 8 news drop that came this week was not official news, but you know, there's always going to be the data miners out there who just can't wait for all the details. And so somebody went through, and I guess this happened a while back, like back in March when the original pack came out. But it, you know, back when the original DLC came out, they posted this leak that said, oh, you know, we don't have all the details, but here's some of the platforms that they're going to be bringing future courses over from. Like, oh, we've got, you know, this next pack is going to be the Turnip Cup, and it's going to have X amount of courses or whatever. And they were right about some of it seems like. So,
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's safe to say, but we know we'll be getting more likely than not, future cups include the Spiny Cup, the Cherry Cup. I'm not going to list all of them, but yeah.
I think we already knew the cup names, but you're
we did?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but all the information about basically where the tracks come from each cup, for this one was confirmed. It's possible that they change things up for the future ones, I suppose. I mean, they have until end of 2023 to make any final decisions, so it could definitely be changed. But it's interesting because I would assume at least the amount of tracks from each title are probably locked in. Like, I don't think that given we have, I think it's 12 tour tracks, I don't think that suddenly they're going to be like, no, let's just give 8 some way down the line. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have 12 tour tracks going forwards. And I think it's actually super interesting because looking at the numbers, I was looking at what tracks from Tour aren't in 8 yet, and as it turns out, we have more Tour tracks on this list than there are Tour tracks currently in Tour. So that would mean that we're getting tracks from Tour that aren't even in that game yet.
Now, is that because they kind of cycle through tracks in that game? Like, oh, you can race on the New York track, but only for the next 3 months.
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how that content format works. But as it is, just looking at all the, the New York Minute, the Bangkok Byway was a recent one, Amsterdam Drift and all that, all those, just the course names without all the different random numbers, because those are just different layouts, and I think they've ignored that for the past tracks. I think there's somewhere around 9 tour tracks that we don't have yet, and there's 12 spots. And then the really interesting part is the tracks that don't have a label. Like Ninja Hideaway doesn't have a label, and Sky High Sunday doesn't. And those, we're not entirely sure what they are, right? Because Ninja Hideaway was a track in Tour, but it wasn't a city-based one. It was just a random one they had in. And Sky High Sunday is a new one, even if it is coming to Tour later. It's one we didn't know about. So it's possible that out of these mystery courses, we're getting a whole bunch of brand new ones.
I think...
Yeah, I wonder if... Yeah, in Ninja Hideaway, that one was weird, because it was in Tour, but it wasn't listed as such. And so that makes me wonder, well, maybe they were actually originally developing it for this DLC, and then they just also brought it to Tour, and maybe that's why it's not listed that way.
Yeah, it came out in 2021, I want to say. It's possible. It's interesting.
I think the Sunday one was data mined on Tor a while ago. So people kind of knew that something like that already. Some of the new tracks that we see on this DLC, my guess is that Nintendo is kind of unifying the developments of those two games. Like if a new track's being developed to be available on both games at the same time, or at least first in the DLC and a while after in the Tor game. Something really interesting about the Sunday one is that it's the first track on this DLC that has anti-gravity sections. So it gives me the idea that it was actually developed with Mario Kart 8 in mind, because Tor does not have anti-gravity. So yeah, it feels like a new track for me.
Yeah. it does make you wonder if the tour track is just going to be the same one, but with anti-gravity turned off. Because I don't think in the trailer we saw any sections of the track that are like super loopy.
Yeah,
For lack of a better term.
Upside down, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know like what their process is for picking these courses and developing them, and but yeah, I think overall it seems like people are pretty positive about what we've seen so far, and I don't know about you guys, but whenever my plan is basically whenever they release one of these new course packs, I'm pretty much just gonna drop whatever I'm doing and go play through all of them for
same.
a day or so, and yeah. All right, well, that was not the only little surprise Nintendo news drop. This one is probably not as exciting to the vast majority of people, but I at least wanted to mention it because I know there are the people out there who are very hardcore about Amiibo still. They won't let the Amiibo dream die. Well, those people will be very excited to hear that Nintendo is releasing their Minecraft Amiibo that they announced, I feel like forever ago. They're Steve and Alex. I play a little bit of Minecraft, but yeah, they're just kind of the main like character
block
skins
folk.
of your. Yeah, the block folk, exactly. Those are coming out September 9th, and yeah, it is crazy to me that they are still in the process of releasing Amiibo for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, considering when that game came out.
Yeah, I think they suffered some delays for the DLC Pack 2 wave of Amiibos. Like, I think the Steve and Alex ones were delayed for quite a bit, several months ago. But it's nice to finally see them. And it, like you said, it's crazy because we still have, 5 characters after this? 4 characters, I think?
I'm gonna make a confession here. I have never bought an Amiibo in my life. I've thought about it.
Wow.
There were some that I thought
That's a
were
lot
cool.
of self-control.
Yeah, I was tempted by some of the Metroid ones because those were cool, but yeah, I just like, I live in a pretty small apartment and I don't have a lot of space just for crap. I already have too much stuff out and our place already looks cluttered. So I'm like, where would I realistically put these, 3 dozen cool Nintendo Amiibos that I want? But what about you guys? Are you guys still like on the Amiibo train?
Go on, Nicolas.
Not so much. I mean, I have a decent amount, and there's a few series where I will definitely pick them up just because I'm attached to them. Like, I'll generally try and pick up any Zelda-themed Amiibo that are announced. If there's anything for, like, the recent Monster Hunter ones, I'll try and get those as well. Xenoblade, there hasn't really been any, but,
Yeah.
I guess the Pyro and Mythra Amiibos, I'll probably end up picking those up just to go along with the Shulk one I have. Other than that, I've picked up a few every now and then. Like, I think the Animal Crossing ones were extremely cheap a while back, so I picked up several of those to have, like, a set of Animal Crossing ones, but,
They had, like, a 3 or 4 pack, if I remember correctly, that, like, put a bunch of them together.
There are a lot of Animal Crossing ones. There's, like, 15 or something. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, man, and that's not even talking about the Amiibo cards for that game.
Oh, God,
wow.
yeah.
Get ready to bankrupt yourself if you're trying to collect all those.
Thankfully, that's not what I'm doing.
I bought mine when it started in 2014. I was kind of hyped because it was something new and all of that during the Wii U era. And I bought Samus, Link, and Donkey Kong. All super simple, of course. And then never bought any of them again. But I always say, like, because here in Brazil, they don't sell Amiibo. Those that I bought was when my father traveled to the United States. So he gone to there and he bought those for me. But I always said, if I lived in the US, I would buy an Amiibo every time I go in a store, because they're so easy to find and all of that. But yeah, I think today it's kind of something that only a few people actually buy. Then I think I wanted the last ones that I was super interested in were the ones from Breath of the Wild. Like, we had this big one with the Guardian. And it looks super awesome and all of that. The only one that I'm looking forward to is Pyro and Mythra right now. If they are really well made and all of that stuff, I'll try to import one of them.
Yeah, I think that's another really neat thing about Amiibo is some of the more recent ones that have come out feel like they're higher quality than the originals.
Yeah, I mean, Shulk is super strange, the original one.
Oh yeah, like the faces especially just feel kind of off. You look at like the old Marth one, like you said, the Shulk one's a good example. They feel very bizarre. In some way, they feel a little uncanny valley.
Yeah.
But some of the recent ones look really, really nice. Like some of the recent Samus Amiibo for Metroid Dread. I think even the ones from Samus Returns, although those are admittedly a little bit older. Those were all really nice. The Breath of the Wild ones were super well made. I have the Shovel Knight ones as well, and I'm super happy with those.
Oh, cool.
I think the fact that those are like cartoony and matte, kind of, in terms of the colors, make them come out super well as Amiibo. But
Yeah, you know, I whenever they do announce some of these figures and I look at them, I'm like, oh, you know, that's cool. Maybe I'll pick one up. But I never do. But then I feel like the other end of the spectrum is like there are folks who have been collecting these Amiibos since they came out. And, you know, at this point, you're like, well, I can't stop now.
I'm too far into it.
too far now. Yeah, the whole sunk cost fallacy, I think people call it. But yeah, no, I think the thing that might have gotten me more excited is like if you could pose them a little bit, or I don't know, but
right.
But
I do think it's funny that we're getting these on the release of Splatoon 3. Like that.
Right.
I guess, you know, there's nothing saying they can't release, you know, Minecraft Amiibo on Splatoon's release date, but it's a little funny. Yeah.
Actually, Nicholas, I regret to inform you that is illegal in 30 of the 50 US states. We are not allowed to release Minecraft Amiibo.
Squids and blocks do not mix.
That's weird.
No. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So that, you know, if you're excited about that, we're very happy for you. And yeah, I will not be picking up these ones either, but maybe someday. Maybe, you know, considering how far behind I am on some of these 3DS games that I've been wanting to be playing, maybe in about 10 years or so, I'll be picking up all these Amiibos, and we'll see. Hey, let's talk some new games that are coming. Well, not all of them are brand new, but some of them are. So Annapurna, who Dennis and others like to regard as the A34 of gaming, just always cracks me up every time because it's true. They had their own kind of not E3 showcase this past week and announced a bunch of new games. Most of them are not coming to Switch, but there are some that are in the works. So probably the biggest one is The Pathless. Now, for those who aren't familiar with this game, this was originally a PS5 game that came out right around the time that console launched, and it's made by the same studio that made Abzu. I don't know if anyone here has played that game. It's kind of a underwater exploration game, very beautiful, very artistically, you know, just very creative. And so this was by that studio, and it's a really fast-paced game. I think it's open world, but what's interesting is you use archery to kind of like traverse the environment. It's a really beautiful game. I haven't played it yet. It's also on Apple Arcade, so that's another place people can play it. But yeah, I was excited to see that one coming to Switch because even though we have seen it on other platforms, like I just mentioned, like on Apple Arcade, it did seem like a pretty ambitious game to try and bring over to the Switch.
Yeah, honestly, I'd completely forgotten that this was something they had shown off for the PS5. Like, I had forgotten this existed, but when they had originally shown it off, it did seem quite interesting in terms of just the concept, the character designs, the art, the focus on having, like, your little bird companion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how it ended up reviewing. Hopefully,
it did okay.
You know,
it did okay. People said like it was a pretty game. You know, it was fun to play, but it wasn't like as ambitious as maybe it was kind of promoted to be. So
I see.
I don't think people were super disappointed with it or anything, but it just kind of landed with a little bit more of a thud.
Okay, well, hopefully it's a good port though.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it runs on Switch because that's the kind of game that when you see a trailer, I think that what catches your attention most is how it is so fast and it is running at 60 FPS and you have like this huge map to explore. So I wonder if the Switch will struggle a bit, but I'm confident that if it took that long to make that port, they probably put some effort here to make the game run in the way that it should.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the case. Oh, and by the way, they also Annapurna also gave an update. This was another previously announced game coming to Switch, but The Outer Wilds, that was announced for Switch way back in a direct, I believe, and they did say like, yes, it is still coming to Switch. They just said it's taken them longer than they thought, but it is still on the way. So that is reassuring. That's a great game. I would definitely recommend that. I played that one through Game Pass originally, and it's a little tricky to wrap your head around because it's extremely non-linear. You know, the game doesn't really overtly tell you where to go or what to do. You just kind of have to figure out the overarching mystery on your own, and it's a lot of trial and error, which is not necessarily always my thing, but it did suck me in that one. So that'll be another one that I'm like, oh, I wonder how that'll run on Switch when that eventually comes out. So something else that they announced during the showcase, and I did actually play this one, also on my PS5 because it was a PS Plus game there. It's called Maquette. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one, but it's a first-person puzzle game, and it kind of plays around with perspective. So you, like, for example, you might be able to kind of glean this from the trailer, but imagine like you have like a small table in front of you, right? And you have like a diorama of the world that you're in. You can like move something around on that diorama, and it will like move it in the broader world. And so it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like kind of like Inception in a way, you know, like whatever you do on this little like board in front of you like affects where objects are in the environment around you.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of Superliminal. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It was another like first-person puzzle game. I do. Yeah.
Have you played that one?
I did not play it, but I did see quite a few videos of it being played, and just like kind of like shift in perspective depending on what you do, and having objects like shrink and change how you interact with the environment reminds me of that a little bit. I really like the concept of this. The use of the actual like these little models as the environment that you're moving in is really cool. Like kind of moving inside a dollhouse. I really like that.
Yeah.
It is very much like that. Yeah. It was really tricky to wrap my head around, to be honest. Like I had a hard time even getting through the first like big environment. I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I was looking at by the end of the trailer, the camera kind of pans out and you see those big models inside the smaller models, and they are like all the same, and it looks really interesting. It seems to be it's kind of a puzzle game, right?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, yeah.
There's like again like kind of like an opaque story going on, but it's mostly like exploring certain themes. It's not like a super like, you know, beat by beat type of story, you know. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people missed that one when it originally came out, but the people who did play Maquette really liked it. So yeah, I'm glad that game is getting a little more attention.
Yeah, I think out of everything that they showed off, if I was to pick up one of them, it would probably be this one. It does seem really fun and creative.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's cool. That's good to hear. Probably the game that I was most excited about, this one just looks, I don't even know how to describe it. It's called Thirsty Suitors. I think they originally showed this one off back at the Game Awards, and it just looks bizarre. So I think the elevator pitch for this one is it's like Scott Pilgrim in the sense that you are like going and fighting your this girl's like previous like partners, her exes, and then but there's also like they say, this is marketing talk, but they say it's also a game about disappointing your parents and skateboarding, and I just don't really know what to make of it, but that just makes me even more excited to play it.
I think it has that kind of mix of fantasy elements with real life, and that's basically the way they are trying to go with it, and it just looks super fun. And the graphics look super amazing.
Oh my gosh,
we have so many
seriously
weird effects going on, so many colorful stuff going on. And it's the funny thing, right? It is a turn-based RPG from what I saw, and if they actually can develop like a fun story that you can get to know these characters and all that stuff that is going on and all these problems that they mentioned in the trailer, I think it can be something quite unique.
Yeah, I am always just blown away when you see a game like this coming out from a fairly small studio, and it just has just such a striking art style and a premise, and just everything about it is just unique and something I haven't seen before. That's what gets me excited about games nowadays. When I see something that I truly have not seen before, you know.
And I think Annapurna is kind of one of the main publishers on that zone right now. I think everything that they show, I always know that will be something different and something interesting. Even if it will not be the best game in the world, I'm always interested in the concept that they are bringing. And sometimes they publish some masterpieces, so it is great.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. There was one more game they showed off in the showcase called Hindsight. I'm not super familiar with it, but it's a story-focused game. It's by the developers of Prune, which is a pretty old puzzle game that was big on smartphones. So it's a pretty big change for them. I believe it is like a third-person kind of puzzle game. It looks like you're like kind of like framing objects and using them as like windows to like look deeper into the environment. So it's kind of like a perspective puzzler also is what I was able to grasp from the trailer. That one is coming out right around the corner. It's coming out August 4th. So I don't know. That one just like totally fell onto my radar. I was not aware of it at all. I guess that's the thing that I really like about these showcases is shining a spotlight on these smaller games that other people would probably just normally miss. You know, at least giving them a little bit of time to hopefully catch people's attention.
Yeah, I like these presentations. I think, and Annapurna is already a big publisher, so I think it grabs a little bit of attention for all these games. This one in particular, I think it probably is a story-driven experience. I saw some of the stuff. It feels very confusing, but I think when you actually play the games, it makes more sense. So
yeah, that's usually the case with these types of things. They try to come off as all mysterious, but usually when you play it, things are a bit simpler in practice. But yeah. All right, well, that pretty much wraps up that showcase. So yeah, like I said, world's longest Nintendo Direct continues. Here's another bit of Nintendo news, Nintendo-specific news that came out this week that I was not expecting, although we knew it was coming at some point this summer. Switch Sports got a small update. Not adding a ton of new features. We're still waiting on golf, man. That's the update I really want. But they added in the leg strap functionality for soccer, so you can actually play. My understanding is you can actually play the full soccer minigame now with the leg strap, which really feels like something that should have just been there on day one. I really don't understand.
Yeah, like I don't know why that took extra development time to put in.
Super weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Like these are the people who made the Wii, right? Like you're telling me you can't get motion controls for soccer working in your own game on launch? I don't know. I'm being a little salty about it, but
the thing is, the game already released with a mode that you use the leg strap. So in a sense,
right.
the motion capture was already there.
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't know. At this point, I can't really predict what's going on with these Nintendo sports games.
This one did add a few different things though, on top, like beyond just being able to kick now.
Yeah. Oh no, go ahead. Please tell me more, Nicholas. I want to hear all about your excitement for this update.
Oh, so excited. The fact that they added new moves to volleyball was something that I noticed and thought was particularly interesting.
That was my favorite part.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that looking at the reviews, I think one of the games I saw people like the least was volleyball. Because it was like super simplistic was my understanding. So I don't know if
I like volleyball.
Well, I like volleyball too, but in Switch Sports it's a different story.
No, yeah, but I know what Nicolas is talking about. I don't understand because volleyball was one of my favorite, and I think it's the only one that I'm still playing with my girlfriend sometimes. But I saw a lot of reviews trashing volleyball.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, regardless,
Didn't realize it was such a controversial sport.
Hopefully the new moves will help add some variety to what you can do. I don't know. It's a bit odd because that's a bigger overhaul than I would have expected.
It's something that should be here from the start, because one of the new moves for volleyball is the... Oh man, it's rocket something.
Rocket serve?
Rocket serve, yes. It's when you're serving the ball and you have this special serve. This was something that was missing because tennis has that. And it was kind of weird because volleyball was becoming something that it was kind of difficult. When all the players in the field were already pretty good, it was kind of difficult to do something different. You know, something was kind of missing, some moves. That's why I'm actually excited to see those updates to the volleyball. But yeah, in general, it just feels... I get the impression with updates like that, it just feels like the game was released unfinished.
Yeah, that's kind of my impression from this too. Like, there are some things in here, reading through the notes of what's been added, that I'm like, yeah, I actually remember missing this. Like, in soccer, the fact that you couldn't reset the camera while you were playing,
true.
And now you can. Like, that's, like, super important in, like, that game. So it feels like a weird oversight, but at the same time, I don't think people are going to be like, oh, thank God I can finally reset the camera in soccer. Time to pick up Switch Sports again. You know.
Yeah,
so I'm going to buy a second copy now.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, the bowling pins, they fall differently now. Wow, I need to go pick up this game again.
And it doesn't even come with golf, as you mentioned, Nick. We know that golf is coming, but it's like in September. And it just feels weird.
Yeah. I do think actually probably one of the quality of life improvements that's in this patch that might actually make a difference for some people is for online play. So now apparently when you are making a room online, you can like give it a room ID basically that you can share with people. So basically even if you want to play with someone who isn't your friend like on your Switch, you can still like put the code out there into the world, your room
nice.
ID, and then people can join in. So that's like, I mean, that's actually a fairly nice thing, like for people who are really invested in playing this game online. And I know there is a community around it. So things like that, I do think will be appreciated by people. But
again, shouldn't we expect that day one in the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nintendo has enough experience at this point making these games with online modes.
Yeah.
You know, there should just be a standard, just even internally for them. I don't even necessarily care if that standard is as high as it is on other platforms. Whatever, there's always going to be some level of Nintendo quirkiness to it. Yeah. But the fact that there's so many differences in between games is really baffling to me. You'd think they would have some type of internal standard, even though of course, like I understand all these online games, you know, Mario Strikers has a totally different development team than this game, so they're not all going to be identical across the board, but they are all ultimately Nintendo first-party games, so you'd think there would be some standard. I don't know.
Yeah. Not to mention that Nintendo is treating all of their development and like their post-launch support very similarly. Like, they clearly have plans for all of these games and are treating them all in similar ways.
It doesn't matter if it's Camelot, if it's Next Level Games, if it's Nintendo themselves. It's always the same style of free updates after the game release.
Yeah. Which, hey, if you want to hear more about that, go listen to last week's episode of the podcast, because you guys talked about that with Mario Strikers quite a bit. All right, well, let's move on to our last big topic of the week, and this is a big topic. Xenoblade 3 is finally out, to much excitement. Really good reviews across the board. People are saying it's somewhat of a different direction for the series, but that it's also potentially like some people's favorite game in the series so far, which is always what you want to hear. Nicholas, I know you've been dying to get your hands on it. And I understand you have not been able to at this point.
Nope, I've had some issues with Amazon, and we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I'll be able to play the game Tuesday, but in the meantime, being able to read all the interviews, all the impressions, everything that people have been talking about with the game has been really, really nice. It's just nice to know that everything about the game seems to be going down very well.
Yeah, so there were some new details that kind of came out this week, right around the time of the game's launch, and kind of some things about the game, but also just the franchise as a whole. So what will you kind of walk us through that, Nicholas? Like, what were some of the more exciting things that you have been reading online about this game this week?
Sure. So there were a series of Ask the Developer interviews. These are the interviews Nintendo has been putting out every now and then. I don't know if it's been every month, but just asking developers about the development of their games, which is just, taking the time to say that's a really good initiative. It's really fun to read through, and I hope they keep doing this.
Makes for great podcast material.
It helps. But yeah, this was them interviewing Takahashi, who's the senior director at Monolith, Kokojima, who is a producer and director for Xenoblade 3, and Genki Yokota, who is also a producer and director, but works more on Nintendo's side than Monolith. And it was just a whole bunch of interviews, a whole bunch of questions dealing with everything from sound design to the world to future plans for the franchise. Some of the highlights were, for example, the fact that this is not the final game in the series, even though it's kind of a culmination of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2. They are planning on doing more with the franchise, which, makes sense. Nintendo probably wants to have this be their Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, so it makes sense for them not to just drop the name like that.
Right. The way they described it was basically it's the end of the story arc, right? Yeah. But that there's going to be more of these games in the future, but because they've kind of been framing this game as like this Xenoblade 3 is going to kind of wrap up the stories that were introduced in Xenoblade 1 and 2. So that makes sense, at least to me.
It definitely makes a lot of sense because there are certain cohesive elements of 1 and 2 that you could very conceivably wrap up in 3. And yet at the same time, there's other aspects that are probably big enough that I would assume they're not going to be conclusively dealt with in this game and will probably be the premise of future games as well. So I think for people who are fans of the series, it's relatively easy to see what other directions you could approach the series from, or even just if they want to make a sequel to Xenoblade X. That's another easy avenue they could take.
Yeah, I think it would be something similar to the Trail series. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that series from Falcon, but they kind of have those trilogies, and those trilogies are kind of in the same world, but then the different trilogies have some small connections in the lore and stuff like that. So we have a bunch of games already. I don't know if there's 10 or 11 games in the series, but there's those separated trilogies that are more linked than the other games. So I would imagine that Takahashi probably has something like that in mind. In general, it's just so nice to see how much attention the series receives. Being a fan of the series, I think it's just so great to see how much thought is put behind the series, how much effort in every single department, in the animations, in the music, stuff like that. It truly is something amazing, because Xenoblade is not a huge success in the sense of a game that sells millions and millions and stuff like that, but the amounts of budget and people that is behind the project is super ambitious. We have, like, Takahashi mentioned that the game has 140 songs, and he even wanted more, but the producer said no. But he even said that he wanted 50 more, stuff like that. And saying as someone who's already playing the game, it's like a movie. You have a specific song for every scene, for every moment. It's great to watch. It feels like you're watching a high production movie, everything's so great.
In other words, the complete opposite of Dragon Quest 11.
Exactly. Even the battles, we have different songs for all the battles and stuff like that.
They even made their own instruments to record the music with, which is just insane.
Did they really?
Yeah, they made their own flutes. They're replicas of the flutes of the two main characters, and they're like fully functional flutes.
They recreated it in real life.
And all, like, it's amazing.
So
that is actually incredible.
The sound of the flutes in the game is a unique sound. There's no other instrument that has that sound because it was created specifically for the game. And stuff like that, it shows how much effort that is behind, how far they are going for this series. And I think the word that Takahashi used, as Nicolas mentioned, combination, I can totally understand when I'm playing the game, because it truly feels like this is the best of Xenoblade 1 and 2. Like they truly learned a lot during all these years. Of course, they made a lot of mistakes to reach here. So it's like the best parts for each game are finally here with a game that is accessible, that is fun to watch and to play, that I think it's like the most polished, it's definitely the most polished experience in the series so far. I've only played 10 hours of the game, which in JRPG measurements, this is nothing, but I already grasped a little of how the game works, of course.
Yeah, so I guess this kind of leads, there is more I want to talk about with Xenoblade 3, but I guess this kind of leads us into our last section of the show, which is usually what everyone has been playing lately. So Luiz, I actually really do want to hear your impressions of this game. Has it been living up to what you've been hoping it would be?
So, yeah, it's like I even said to Nicolas, what can I say? It's exactly what we were expecting. We knew that this was going to be the best one in the series, and it is great to watch it unfold. I started playing by midnight from Thursday to Friday, so I've been playing for a while now. It's hard to stop playing. I have to stop because I have to do work and stuff like that, but the games grab you so hard. And I think the thing that I can two things that impress me the most. First, the tutorials. Like, they really learned about the tutorials, because Xenoblade is quite complex, the combat is really different from anything else, so you have to give a little bit of time for the player who never played something like that to actually get used with the combat. And this time the tutorials, they are kind of similar to tutorials in those mobile games, you know, where they actually they want to make sure that you are making what they want you to make. So they teach you what you have to make, but then there's this little checkbox that is waiting for you to do the thing. And we didn't have that in 2. So you only advance in the game if you actually do the stuff that you need to do. And they kind of introduced all the stuff really, really slow, so there's time for you to get used with all the mechanics and stuff like that. And there's even the possibility to go to training modes to try to do some of the stuff that you already learned. So I think from Xenoblade 2, we've gone from one of the worst tutorials in a JRPG to probably one of the best, in my opinion. It really is
a good sign
an
for
improvement.
the game as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, this is a game that so far I would recommend to anyone. Even people who are not very used to JRPG, I think it's a game that's really easy to understand. I think, to me, for so far, it's at the same level of Persona 5, which I consider a JRPG fairly easy to get used to. And so far, it being to that level of polish, you know? The other stuff that impressed me beyond the tutorials are the visuals, because that was one of the issues. Of course, we know that Monolith Soft like to create those amazing worlds, and they are beautiful. But with Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade Definitive Edition, the resolution was really blurry sometimes. In handheld mode was really bad for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And here, I don't know what kind of wizardry they made, but the game looks super sharp. Like, when you're looking at your screen, is a noticeable evolution. Honestly, it even feels like I'm playing a different console sometimes, because it looks better than Xenoblade 2, but in a better resolution. And from what I saw in the Digital Foundry video, the resolution still is pretty low, but they're making some sort of shenanigans, some sort of technical stuff to give the illusion that the image is more sharp than it actually is. So
Monolith are just wizards. It's insane.
So it works.
Some kind of scaling technology or
something like that. Exactly. And to me, it works so far. I don't want to talk a lot about the story because of spoilers and stuff like that, but it's been amazing so far. It truly is.
Well, that's great to hear. And one of the things that came out about this game, they're saying that the total area that you can explore, like the size of the game's world, it is over 5 times larger than Xenoblade 2. Which I have not played these games, but I do know that Xenoblade 2 is just an absolutely massive game, and so I just cannot imagine what a game 5 times the size of that. Like, first of all, why? And second of all, how?
Because we can, Nick. Because we can.
We have the technology. Well, that's a good answer. So, have you been impressed, like, with the scope of what you've been playing? Like, does it feel too big? Or have you not really gotten that far into it yet?
Yeah, I think I have not got into the biggest areas yet. Of course, it is big, but I still didn't get the impression to see something that I didn't in the previous games. So far, it's on the same level of scale, of course. Uh, it's not
Okay.
like a proper open world like Xenoblade X or stuff like that. There's loading areas between, like you have those big areas, but when you go from one big area to the other, you have a loading screen. So it's not like completely seamless. It's something like it's not something that you actually feel disconnected or stuff like that. It's really similar to the first Xenoblade in that sense. I think
Yeah. Well,
related.
I've always really liked that format personally.
Yeah.
Because I do sometimes when I'm facing a big open world game, it can be overwhelming sometimes when you feel like everything is open
Exactly.
to you all at once and you're like, oh my god, I could literally go in any direction. I don't know like where I should focus my energy first. So I actually kind of like having still really big zones that feel like open areas, but that you can kind of cleanly like transition from one to the other.
True, true. I think the difference about 5 times bigger open areas. I think because Xenoblade 2, I have the impression that that game was supposed to be way bigger. I don't know if Nicolas agree with me, but some areas on Xenoblade 2 they are like super a straight line.
Yeah,
Like there's not a lot to explore.
Yeah,
Some
Capcom
final
has
areas.
actually talked about that in interviews where they wanted the game to be a bit more condensed compared to Xenoblade 1 and especially Xenoblade X. So you would be able to find more things faster. Like it would just be a little bit denser in terms of the amount of content, which means that the game was a little bit, like you said, it was a bit narrower in scope. Despite it is a really big game. It has some
Oh,
massive
totally.
areas, but it was a little bit more compressed in that regard.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, and then with that game they had the big Torna expansion pass, which we've talked about a little bit, and it sounds like they're planning on. This also came out from the interviews this week that when they do make their big story expansion for Xenoblade 3, they're hoping to make it just as large as what they did for Xenoblade 2, so people can expect a pretty massive story expansion. Their quote is, "It will be quite a high volume of content that will not let you down."
See,
Yeah.
it's funny because I think as like fans, this isn't exactly news because I think this is what a lot of us were expecting.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess they did kind of need to confirm this.
Because I think the words in that they use is always different because they say, oh, story content or new story stuff, and you are not 100% sure what that exactly means. Because Torna was basically a different game. Like the area, it had no connections to the main game. When you start Torna, it's a different save, different areas, everything completely different menu actually. So we didn't know exactly what to expect from if it was going to be the exact same thing. So it's kind of nice to hear that. Yeah, the Xenoblade hype train will continue to go for at least a year more.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Nicholas, I know you have not been playing Xenoblade 3, but what have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing another RPG, Live Alive, which I had started last week, and I hadn't played as much at the time. I just beat the game yesterday, so, it was great. I really loved it, honestly. It kind of surprised me in terms of how much I enjoyed it. It's super interesting because it's not every day we get an old SNES era RPG that never made it to the West that suddenly gets a
Right.
remake and now so many people can experience it for the first time. It's interesting that there are so many old RPG-isms in terms of, having a bunch of optional content, hidden bosses, all this kind of older stuff that you'd expect from an RPG. And yet at the same time, it feels so modernized. Like, the visuals are probably one of the things that impressed me the most, because I genuinely think the game is one of the best looking games on the system. The use of HD 2D sprites with the backgrounds is great. Obviously, the sprites themselves look fantastic, but what really impressed me was how the devs found a way to use like a specific sense of depth by changing the camera angle, using certain lighting effects and particle effects. You end up having these huge senses of scale Like one of the story sequences takes place in an old Japanese castle, where you start at the bottom and then you have to make your way all the way to the back and up the castle. And there's just these little sequences where you can see the entire thing looming behind you as you like approach. The camera changes so you can see just how massive this thing really is. And this is all happening in, with sprites. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, Square Enix has really invested a lot in this HD 2D art style, and it seems like every time they release a new game with it, they're always making improvements to the engine behind it and trying to do new things to play around with the perspective and the actual art style itself. So, I mean, I have not played this game yet, but yeah, I was also just blown away by the art style, and I'm glad to hear that you seem to feel like it still feels like a modern game considering the age of the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the presentation is top notch. The voice acting was also genuinely impressive. They had a lot of nice. Since some of the stories take place in Japan or in China and whatnot, they actually have I'm not sure if they're native actors, but people that speak the language and actually speak it authentically, and you can hear it in their accents. They sound genuine. It's not just like Matt Mercer voicing a Japanese warlord. This is a genuine person that speaks Japanese that's voicing this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the voice acting really helps sell a lot of these characters because it's really well done.
Something that I wanted to ask, Nicolas, one of the common criticisms that I saw with some reviews, I don't want you to give a lot of spoilers because your review will still come out, but just a question. Some people mentioned that some of the stories felt a little short or not that well developed. Did you feel that with the main game? After finishing, did you feel like you had a full experience? How did those stuff with those small stories played out at the end for you?
Yeah, so it's a little complicated because at the end of the day, there are 9 different story sequences, one of which has 2 different endings where it changes. It varies a lot, and basically every single one of those sequences plays out kind of like a different game. The only thing that is the same is like the core mechanics and the battle system, but in terms of like how the story plays out, how you move around the world, how you interact with it, they're all very different, and that definitely leads to some of the stories being less impressive than other ones. For instance, one of the stories is like a 30-minute boss rush, and that's essentially all it is. You don't have really any context on the character.
Oh.
It's just, hey, I'm a guy that wants to fight a lot of strong people, and so you fight a lot of strong people.
Street Fighter 1?
Yeah, that is one thing. Again, presentation-wise, it's literally presented like Street Fighter. So it looks very fun, but it's true that ends up being a little bit shallow because, it's just 6 fights. They're not especially complicated, so you get through them fast, and then suddenly you're done. On the other hand, you have some stories that are really well crafted, in my opinion. Like the, I think it's Twilight of Edo Japan, which is the ninja one where you infiltrate the castle, is super well done. It almost plays like a Metroidvania, where it's this giant, expansive area where you as a ninja, you get to kind of explore at your own pace, kind of choose which paths you take, and there's a whole bunch of optional things you can do. I think there's like 8 hidden super bosses or something that I don't think I found a single one of, to be honest. Because there's just so much there. It's like ridiculous.
I did not realize that the gameplay in each of these chapters was going to be so different. I mean, I knew about the time, like, different time settings and different story beats, but that's really surprising to hear how different the gameplay is.
It's completely different. I mean, in the same story, the Japan one, you have a stealth mechanic where you can just hide from enemies. And so another kind of sub-objective of the entire story is there are 100 people in this castle. If you manage to get through the entire castle without having to kill anyone, you get a special reward at the end. On the flip side, you can also basically do a genocide route and just murder everyone. And it's just
wow.
It's like these little things where like there's a lot of variation. Another story has literally 1 fight in it, and basically all of it is just a narrative. It's basically the Distant Future story, which
I know what it is. Yeah.
yeah, it's basically just a mix of 2001: A Space Odyssey and Alien, and it's
Oh my
all
God.
story.
Yeah, when you're describing all this, it all sounds super intriguing. I still just cannot fully wrap my brain around it. I'm sure now that you finished it, I'm sure you could answer this, but you probably don't want to because it's a spoiler. But I just can't understand how all these stories are going to interconnect. I'm sure that's like the
Yeah.
main thing that makes it exciting when it all happens.
Sort of. It's
Sort of. No,
it's loose. It's a story connection that isn't super vital.
Okay.
It's I don't want to spoil it because it is still a
right.
story portion, but it's basically just there is a small recurring element at the very end of everyone's stories where it's just like, hey, this name seems familiar, this name seems familiar, this name seems familiar. And then at the very end, you learn that, all these people that share the same name all connected to this one other guy just by, like, they have the same name, basically.
Interesting.
It's not a huge connection, but it's basically just, hey, we're setting up that there is an eventual thing at the end.
Yeah, I see.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're so positive on the game, Nicholas. Hopefully it makes hopefully it made your wait for your copy of Xenoblade 3 a little bit easier in the meantime. As for me, I have been playing. I was in the mood for something short this weekend that I could just like burn through in a single day, and so I played through Stray, the big new cat game that came out, start to finish in a whole day, and it was amazing. It was
Wow.
It was a really
How many
really good
hours
game.
do you think?
I would say, I feel like I typically play games slower than most people. I'd say it probably took me about 6 to 7 hours to get through.
Okay. Yeah.
So, which honestly felt like the perfect length. Like, some people were saying they thought the game was a little too short, but for me, like, when I got to the end of the game, I was like, no, like, I feel like this, like, there was a satisfying story arc. I feel like I got to do quite a bit of exploring. There's a lot of, like, little, like, secrets and stuff tucked away in this game, lots of little side quests and side objectives for people who really want to spend more time in the game's world. So, I loved it. It was a fantastic experience. Probably one of my favorite, like, next gen, in quotes, experiences that I've played so far.
Dennis described the story, and I read some of the synopsis, and it looks super different, super interesting. My doubt is that the actual gameplay, it's a game only with exploration, there's some kind of combat. How does it work?
Yeah, so the best way I can to describe it is it feels like it feels kind of close to, like, my brain jumps to Uncharted, which is not like the best, like, comparison, but the reason my brain jumps to that is because, like, everything is kind of like you've got all these different segments, right? So, like, you've got segments where you're doing a lot of, like, platforming and you're exploring. No, Uncharted really is not. I take it back. It's not a good comparison. I'll just describe it.
Your cat gets a gun.
Well, you kind of do. So,
Whoa, wasn't expecting that.
Cat has a gun and
not-
won't take its medication.
it's not really a spoiler to say that or anything. But so basically, the way it works is, it's a very linear game for the most part. But you do have a couple of areas that are these pretty large, like, hub areas where you get to explore. And your main crux is you're this cat, and at the beginning of the game, your cat falls down deeper into the city, and and your whole objective is to make it back up to the surface, right?
I see.
And so, right, so you're progressing through all these kind of, like, cavernous, like, city environments, and some of them are very like linear. You might be being chased by something and you need to just, like, navigate really quickly. Some of them are a little, like, stealth focused, where you don't have any of your abilities and you need to sneak past guards and stuff undetected. There are some elements where there's, like, I don't want to spoil it, but, like, there is, like, this, like, threat, this, like, broader threat in the game that you're given some tools to kind of, like, fend it off. So that part does kind of play like a shooter, but eventually those tools are taken away from you, and so like, the game introduces a lot of different like gameplay styles, and then it'll move on to something else. So there's a lot of variety in what you do.
Wow, it sounds like a great action adventure experience. I would imagine, because you mentioned that there's stealth sections, platforming, stuff like that. So it just sounds like a complete package.
Yeah, I would say like probably the thing that this game is just like jaw-droppingly gorgeous. I mean, it really shows. I don't think I've ever seen like environments in a game that have like this granular of attention to detail. Like every little object in some of these apartments that you'll see, everything has physics attached to it. Everything is like just I can't just even describe it. I mean, if you've seen any gameplay of the game, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
I saw some of that.
it really feels different when you're explaining something, like when you're actually playing it, and like the way like the cat's like puddles like splash around the cat's feet, and you're like tracking paint through people's houses, the way like every little thing on a shelf you can just knock over, and like sometimes really inconvenience
The real
people.
cat experience.
Yes.
Yes, the real cat experience.
Do you think there's
see-
any chance we are going to see this game on Switch on the future, or do you think it's too much?
Oh, I don't ever want to say never, because
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it running on like the Steam Deck and stuff. Like it does seem like a game that can scale down to other types of hardware, and I think you can play it on PS4 as well. So it's not just totally a next gen game. But I would be very impressed if they brought it over to Switch. It feels like it might be just a little too much going on for that console to handle. But I've been wrong about that before, so we'll see. But yeah, if any of you guys have a means to play this game, I would recommend it. It's a really charming, very immersive experience, and I really did. I played it start to finish in one day, only stopping to go eat. So, all right. Well, that about wraps up our show for the week. Thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 19 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. We really appreciate everyone's continued support of the show. If you like what you've been listening to, please spread the word, share it out on Twitter or whatever your social media network is of choice. We are always trying to get new people to join the show, and if you like what you've been listening to, definitely let us know what you've been enjoying. We're always open to suggestions. If there are topics you want to have us explore on the show, let us know. Our comments are open, and you can always email us at our show email, which is in the show notes on our Spotify and our Anchor page. And we're available everywhere. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can also catch up with us on streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Audible, etc. So yeah, that about wraps things up. Thank you, everyone, and we will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.